pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a little more palaver on Hail to Stephen King, the show that I do twice weekly here on the Horror Show, every terrifying Tuesday, every scarific Saturday, and yeah, there was a little lull when we were covering the Phoenix Film Festival recently, and the programming was, kind of shifted around a little bit, but yep, we are back to our regular time slots, at least until Phoenix Comic-Con coverage, which is coming at the end of May. But so, as you can see by all these King books beside me, if you are new to this program, King is my favorite author. I've read all of his books, and I have been doing a new series here called Sequels That Forgot the Faces. Well, let's just take this from the beginning. Fuck. Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for another installment of Palaver on Hail to Stephen King, the show that I do twice a week, every terrifying Tuesday, every scarific Saturday. We had a little bit of a lull during our Phoenix Film Festival coverage where days and times and stuff were shifted around a little bit, but at least until Phoenix Comic-Con at the end of May, we are back in action on our regular days and times. And so, as you can see by all these books beside me, if you are new to the proceedings, Stephen King is my favorite author, and I've actually read every single one of his books that you see seated beside me, anxiously awaiting The Outsider next month. And so, as I try to find new bits of coverage to do here on this show, I've been just kind of like, what else can I cover? What else can I cover? And I've already done 2 entries in this series. It's a new one, or at least fairly new at this point, because this is our 3rd installment of films that forgot the face of their father. Yeah, I think that's got some nice alliteration to it. And yes, ironically enough, first 2 installments of this, I didn't hate the movies, because I've seen some really bad Children of the Corn sequels and Mangler sequels and stuff like that. But, A Return to Salem's Lot, Larry Cohen, it's not the greatest, but I found some merit in it. And the same thing kind of went with Pet Sematary 2, which, neither of those were really based on anything King-wise, and so that's why when I first approached this limited bit of coverage, I was like, these movies are going to suck ass, and they're going to be so terrible, and I'm going to easily be able to rip them apart. But perhaps it's because of the fact that I'm coming into these as not only a King fan, but also a fan of horror, that I'm finding merit in them, and this new it's no exception, man, this newest installment, and I'm laughing about it because all of these King sequels that he has nothing to do with writing-wise, they do their damnedest to be so batshizle crazy, it feels like. I mean, Pet Sematary 2 was maybe, in some ways, the tamest of these 3 that I've covered so far, but today we are talking about Sometimes They Come Back Again. Yes, that's right. Sometimes they come back again. This is ironically a much bloodier and obviously based on, the forewarning I just gave you, crazier kind of sequel of sorts to the original Sometimes They Come Back, produced by Dino De Lorenzo. He also did Maximum Overdrive and Cat's Eye and, a bunch of King stuff there for a little while in the 80s. This had nothing to do with his production stuff, but so Sometimes They Come Back. If you haven't heard me say it before on this program, y'all, it is seriously, honestly, one of my favorite Stephen King short stories he has ever done. It's dark, it's crazy, it's nearly 30 pages, so it's not like one of those super quick little bites. It's got a little bit more meat to chew on it, and the ending is crazy. Genuinely crazy. Very different from the ending that we saw in the 1991 TV series adaptation that, Dino's company did that I just mentioned. And so that one with Tim Matheson, I believe, is in it. Yeah, and Brooke Adams, who was also in The Dead Zone and stuff, and plays the wife of this teacher who had his brother killed by these, 50s greaser bullies, and then, he comes back to the town where he was raised and stuff, and, yeah, he has, a showdown with these guys because they've come back from the dead, but there's not really an extensive amount of explanation given as to why they come back. It's just, hey, sometimes they come back, and you just gotta deal with it, and vanquish these evil reincarnated spirits, I guess. And that's exactly what happens in the film adaptation, or the TV film of Sometimes They Come Back. But Sometimes They Come Back Again, there's mention of that teacher. His name is Jim Norman, I want to say. Yeah, Jim Norman. And but so this is only a sequel in like similar ideas, expansion upon mythology, and then mention of that character who was the lead in the original Sometimes They Come Back. And it takes place in the same like pseudo town. It was originally in Connecticut in the novel, and then they changed stuff and whatnot. But so yeah, this movie's wacky. It's really wacky, but it's of that fun kind of wacky, and surprisingly, it has a really, really great cast. So I'm just, always here in the horror show, we like to just cover overall impressions. We like to cover a little bit of story. We like to cover some acting, some effects, and, just cinematography and how the thing was shot. And then lastly, music and sound effects and stuff like that. So overall impressions, once again, we're 3 for 3. I'd never watched this movie before, whereas I had watched A Return to Salem's Lot before, and I had watched Pet Sematary 2 before. I had never watched Sometimes They Come Back Again, which is why when I'm sitting there watching it and I'm just like, holy smokes, Michael Gross is in it, and I'm just like, wow, Hilary Swank is in this, Jimbus Crimbus, and this is mid-90s, it's 1996, and so it's like, it's after Gross had started doing the Tremors franchise and whatnot. It's before Hilary Swank became an Oscar-nominated actress, and there's also like the girl who played Jan Brady in the Brady Bunch movie. So this movie is very, very mid-90s in a lot of ways, but once again, it was crazy enough and just kind of pushed its R rating enough, whether it was, like a little bit of nudity here and there, or, some surprisingly bloody kills and just silliness. It's a silly movie, but it's one that, as a fan of B horror, I wouldn't say I loved it. I don't even know if I'd say I really liked it, but, I'd be like, I liked it. Yeah, I had fun with this movie. Once again, it's when you go in with donuts of expectation, as I say all too often here on the horror show, the burden of expectation, damn it. So that's all I will say about overall impressions. It's not perfect, and it's really bad at certain times, but it's got some fun moments. It genuinely does, and it's interesting the way it expands on the mythology, and that's where I can jump into the story here, in the fact that our lead character, who is played by Michael Gross, who surprisingly here, just when you look at him, he's not rocking the mustache, and he's playing it pretty straight. He is way more Family Ties Michael Gross, yeah, that's right, Michael J. Fox's Pops on that show, than Burt Gummer. He is much more on the side of the loving, iconic father that he was on that 80s sitcom. And so he's a psychologist, and like one of the first scenes in the movie is him sitting down and trying to just listen to why this guy can't get over his fear of the dark, and just a grown man nonetheless, and just trying to advise him through things. And yeah, he finds out that his mother has died, and he has to go back to his hometown, which is ironically the same town that Jim Norman was from. And so he goes back for the funeral, and they're like kind of taking care of her estate, and they're packaging up everything, and they meet the crazy speed racer, mentally handicapped gardener guy, and there's just a very strange cast of characters, especially the Jan Brady actress, who's like, she's almost like a psychic tarot card reading girl, and then she has a sex-crazed best friend, and the two of them hit it off with Hilary Swank, who plays Michael Gross's character's daughter, and this is after the next Karate Kid, but before Boys Don't Cry. And so it was like that little sweet spot before, her career just exploded and she became like a Hollywood A-lister, as she has been for quite a while now. And so, yeah, they're like settling the estate, as I mentioned, and all of a sudden, this guy from his past, who was instrumental in the death of his sister, are you seeing similarities here in some of the beats, along with two of his friends. First, just the main guy who was dating his sister shows up, and it just kind of rolls along from there, and stuff gets wackier, stuff gets it's campier at times, but also bloodier and crazier. And when we do hear mention of Jim Norton's character, it's where they talk about, it's almost more akin to the ritual that he invoked in the original source material, the short story, because that was one of my biggest gripes about the TV movie, the original Sometimes They Come Back, is that it didn't do that insane ending, where boy, should I spoil it? I really don't know. Let's just say there's some demon summoning to combat other demons. That's about as close as I can get to it. So very, very different than what we saw happen in the end of the Sometimes They Come Back TV film. And so when this priest, who Michael Gross's character went to consult after things went down with with this guy and his two little greaser henchmen, that were along for the ride when this dude was dating his sister and inevitably was responsible for her death. So as opposed to in the previous one where it was a younger brother, this time it's an older sister. And for whatever reason, the ginger from the Big Green is in this, and he's super sex crazed, and he has this phrase where he's talking about BFP, man, BFP, best friend priorities, as he's trying to coerce Noonan's character as a kid into letting him check out some binoculars and see his friend's sister naked. And there's some strange parts to this movie, man, I tell you. But the darkness, the crazier, just more violent and satanic aspect of this, they actually captured a much better impression of that than the original film did. It's more likened to the short story, which is kind of weird, especially when they get into some deeper, just real mythology about how, King Solomon from the Old Testament in the Bible, son of King David, one of the most, celebrated, kings of the nation of Israel and everything. And so, yeah, Solomon was obsessed with the dark arts and trying to keep the devil's forces at bay and weird things like that. And so we go into old incantations and they basically through this film tried to explain why these characters came back, similar to the fashion that we saw them come back in the previous film. And so that's one thing where story-wise this film really kind of succeeds. I can't really tell you how everything pans out beyond that, because you need to watch the movie, and I want to know how bad you think this sucks, or how much you think I should be ripping on it, or if, like me, you think it was it was fun. And as far as if you just judge it as a horror film that is of the campier, more B variety that veers into more violent territory than you might have expected, I think you'll have fun with this. So let's jump into acting. It's really weird. We've got Alexis Arquette, who is part of that big Arquette third generation clan, I want to see, that had our buddy David Arquette, Dewey from the Scream movies, and then also had, we're talking Roseanne Arquette, we're talking Patricia Arquette, but he was interesting in the fact that he did a lot of cross-gender roles. I think he had a name, it was something Genesis or Exogen, I don't know, but he did just kind of cross-gender roles in a lot of films, and then he ended up actually transgendering, and he had kind of a troubled life, unfortunately, which is a real bummer, because he's menacing but funny in the same right in this, but he's not, he's playing a, just kind of straight demonic dude in this, who comes in and charms the Hilary Swank character. And there's I don't know, he actually oozes an interesting charisma on the screen. He kind of reminds me of Dee Snider a lot, I gotta say, in this movie. But yeah, his performance is actually pretty damn good. I have to give him credit. The two henchmen that eventually arrive later in the film, they're just okay, less memorable. Kind of similar to the band of I guess antagonists in the previous Sometimes They Come Back. So, but he chews up the screen when he's on there, especially once he starts killing fools. And yeah, he does a pretty damn good job. Also, Michael Gross, despite playing it pretty straight, he's good in this, especially as you see him kind of descending more into the madness of realizing what is happening here, because he's initially in denial, and just seeing him rise to the occasion, and in the midst of his insanity that he's worried is creeping up. And that must be a really kind of nuts thing, if I'm going to use another slang term for just losing your mental grasp and stuff. It's really interesting to see somebody who's a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I don't exactly know offhand what the difference is between the two. Maybe one goes just a little bit deeper, or it's just different terms for it. But nonetheless, to see somebody who helps others with their mental health start to lose his mental health, it's kind of a decent dichotomy. This movie, once again, writing-wise, was better than I thought it would be. Hilary Swank plays the daughter in distress, who is kind of almost entranced and glamored by this reincarnated demonic dude and stuff. But all the other performances are fun enough when they need to be, but not supremely memorable. Speed Racer Kid, God, there's a pig in here for whatever reason, and you know, spoiler, the pig is gonna end up being bacon at some point. It's just like, man, if you're putting a pig in a mid-90s horror movie, I mean, I'd say a pig is much more on the chopping block than a dog or a cat or something like that. But then again, you know, this is Stephen King, so, you know, cats and dogs, they die in Stephen King books. But, yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna jump into, I gotta go into the practical effects here. I really, really do, because, you know, the makeup of the true demonic state of these, you know, reincarnated, you know, greaser, whatever dudes, it's actually done pretty damn good, I have to say. And there's one scene in particular, it's almost like a rebirthing blood pool kind of spot where, you know, the dudes are coming from. It's one of the best scenes in the entire movie, where main dude is resurrecting one of his little droogs, I guess you could say, if I'm going to use some Clockwork Orange terminology. And it's really good. It's very well done. It's creepy. It's bloody. Seeing just the formation of the organs and the ears and everything, and then slowly getting to the point of just being more of a normal looking dude, and he's just standing there buck-ass naked, you know, total Carrie style, covered in blood. It's well done. Seriously, it is. And it surprised me. I mean, aside from that, the one kill I have to mention that I really, really loved, deals with tarot cards. And if anyone has seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. It's almost like Gambit tarot cards. Yeah, imagine those getting lodged in somebody. Kind of nutsoid. And there's another cheesy one with a lawnmower and stuff. But, I mean, nonetheless, there are a couple bits in this where I was truly surprised at how gory it went. You know, going from a TV film to a direct-to-video R-rated, you know, that's got boobs and buckets of blood and certain pools of blood in certain cases, and a couple genuinely grisly kills, I was like, okay, this is going where I wasn't necessarily expecting. So, I mean, between mythology expansion, between kills that were actually, you know, gory and kind of crazy, and decent performances, yeah, this was a lot better than I thought. And even the music, you know, there's an eerie, like, piano type score to it that it's effective. And it was, even as I was getting the cameras and stuff set up to discuss this with you guys, it was kind of still stuck in my head, and I was just like, oh, this was not bad. I was expecting bad. I was expecting, like, Cujo turds or something, but it didn't end up being that. There's some cheesy dialogue in here, though. But you know, it's the whole tongue-in-cheek. It's the whole B movie. It's the whole silliness of it. You know, most of these lines are done by the dearly departed Alexis Arquette, sadly. But yeah, aside from that, it's got more good going for it than it has bad going for it. Now, I know that 2 years later, in '98, sometimes they come back for more, I want to say, or some crap like that, and that has nothing to do with the same town. It's not even like a true sequel, to the best of my knowledge. It takes place on, like, some Arctic, I don't know, battle post or some garbage like that. So you will eventually see me covering that here on this series, once again entitled Films That Forgot the Face of Their Fathers. I don't know. I'm waiting for a really bad one to tear apart, and it's just not happened yet. As I peruse, I didn't even really have to look at these notes too much. Man, there's a weird demon sex scene at one point, though, that is... Anyway, once again, it's this film just going in places, really strange places that I wasn't expecting, that made it surprisingly enjoyable. It's not Shakespearean theater. It's not even close to the short story or even the Best of King. However, I went in with the most open mind that I could, and in some ways I liked it better than the original Sometimes They Come Back. I did, because I was disappointed with that adaptation. It just didn't have the teeth that I felt really was representative. It was a serviceable adaptation, but how many serviceable Stephen King adaptations did we have aside from, like, the original It and Pet Sematary and The Stand and The Dead Zone and Cujo and Carrie and Salem's Lot? I mean, bottom line, most of the Stephen King adaptation, Misery obviously being another one, Dolores Claiborne, but I mean, if you got a scorecard and you're keeping score, a lot more Stephen King adaptations were just so-so and serviceable in comparison to being really, really good. Dreamcatcher, Bag of Bones. Anyway, I've been Jaime and Fuego, and I'm just going to leave it there, y'all. I extend a grande gracias for anybody tuning into this program here. You can find me on all social media sectors, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, just at Jaime and Fuego, as you see it spelled below. If you haven't rang that bell, if you are already a subscriber here on The Horror Show, that will give you all notifications about new content that we do, which is everything from convention coverage, to film reviews, to video game let's plays, to trailer reactions, celebrity interviews. We are relentless with our horror coverage, as I always like to say. Cecil, our fearless leader, and I'm his number one, you know, as his Lieutenant Riker, or Commander Riker, I should say. Damn right, I should give myself proper credit. But he likes to call us the most prolific horror channel on YouTube. We may not be the best, I love to think that we are, but there's a lot of channels I respect the hell out of that I could name quite a few off the bat here. But, you know, he likes to say we're the most prolific because of the fact that we're nuts enough to do at least 2 episodes a day, sometimes 3, sometimes even 4, depending on the day, if we go live with something or whatever. So, yes, we appreciate so very much everybody who tunes into these programs, and if you haven't subscribed or anything like that, please do like and share this video with the hashtag Hail to Stephen King, just like you see it spelled below as well, if you want to share this video with, you know, fellow constant readers and fans of Sai King. And I actually, hey, watch this movie and just accept it for what it is, as just being just some entertaining popcorn crap from the mid-90s. I actually liked it. So, until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, constant viewers, hasta luego, sin amigos, and everybody who supports this show, I greatly appreciate it. And until we meet one another again next week, remember, stay scared. And you know what? Please, seriously, for me, for your homeboy Fuego, read Sometimes They Come Back. The short story is terrific. Mwah.